Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day, there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And oh my gosh, you can't believe how excited I am to talk to my guest today, because we're going to be talking about working from home tips, and more importantly, how important it is to slack off. I love this. This is going to be so much fun. So please join me in welcoming Michael Arnold to our program today. Welcome, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Deb. Thank you for having me.
Great. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So
Okay.
Michael Arnold has been a work from home entrepreneur from over 15 years. Talk about experience, and worked with major corporations such as Cox Automotive, Verizon Superpages, and major commercial finance companies. His journey wasn't a smooth sailing one, since he is also human, like all of us, and he made many mistakes along the way. But he lived to share some wisdom from his own experience to help people on their work from home journey and create their own successful actions. He is the author of Slacking Off: A Successful Way to Work from Home. So again, Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Deb. It's a pleasure to be here.
I love it. Well, I always like to hear a little bit more about how people got to where they are today. So give us a little bit of a story about, tell us a little bit about the story of your journey to how you got to where you are right now.
Gladly. Well, much like everybody who begins their careers, they start testing different things that they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I started in a office, much like many people. As a matter of fact, I actually started in a construction industry and realized that all those people who I were looking at as the end of their careers were getting injured, and then I ended up in an office. And while we love working with our hands, right, we don't want to get injured. So I started looking at office jobs, just like many people, and worked in a facility where I went to a job and held a schedule, and shortly realized that was not going to be the way I'd spend time with my family. Ended up working or looking for something that I could do that would give me the ability to work from home, and ironically stumbled into the commercial finance industry, where I wasn't working from home at all, and it wasn't an option. I learned that industry in about a year and became the head of that company in commercial finance, and created my own company as a result, and therefore created my own work from home job, if you will. Did everything that you could do wrong, overworking myself, not spending time with the family that I had ever so wanted to spend time with, and then slacking off in a way that obviously wasn't helpful, but almost, when you push yourself every day to work 15 hours a day or something, and then all of a sudden you're taking slacking off time at inappropriate times. And really struggled to maintain both things. And then at the end, both suffered, actually, as a result. Then, because I had achieved so much business-wise as an entrepreneur, was invited to join companies like Verizon, where they were seeking out the best of the best to do new things, to transition businesses actually out of Yellow Pages into the digital world. So they're kind of carnivorous and eating their own accounts. So throughout that, I learned that a couple things. Their perception and reality for people that work from home is very different for both the people doing it and the people seeing those people. My wife at the time would see me working from home and say, "You don't really look like you're working."
Right.
But I'd be working, right? And then I'd see her and I'd say, "You just don't understand, what I'm going through right now, or what's happening." Especially I was in a career at that time with Verizon where I would go visit clients constantly.
Mhm.
And the whole rules of Verizon, I loved it. There was one of my bosses, his name was Raji. He was like a very tall Indian man that just had a voice that carried, and he was very motivating. And he was of a philosophy that you get your job done as soon as you can, and the rest of the time through the month, you get to do what you want.
Oh.
And he really didn't preach the corporate go and work as hard as you can. He preached that if you get your goal accomplished, then you can slack off. He didn't really know at the time, but this was something that I obviously utilized and actually was able to apply successfully in the book here, the way I did it. And so what I found was I was able to hit my goal the first day of the month. That was what in salespeople's pipelines, I was sandbagging.
Right.
So I would set up my month and my next month and my next month and my next month in 1 month, because I realized that I could. Most people are trying to catch up, catch their tail, I guess you could say. So anyway, long story short, I transitioned out of that job into a social media strategy job, and then I went into more internet-based stuff, and then ended up at Cox Enterprises, where it was a very similar role, but really just was more consulting, helping individuals at their location, which is kind of funny. When earlier before this, we were talking about people and their beginnings and things like that. As a young kid, I was somebody who I used to go spend my summers in St. George, Utah, and my grandmother worked in the college. And so she'd take me with her to the college, and I'd walk around and I'd visit people. And
so you were that meter greeter from a young age.
Yeah, I think I was like 7 years old, I believe at the time. And I found myself up at the airport, speaking with the air traffic controllers, and speaking with professors, and going to doctor's office and restaurants, and you just name it. And I was a visitor, I'd visit people, and they would always tell me all their problems. And so anyway, long story short, that's helped me actually in my career as being a consultant. And so long story short, at Cox Enterprises, that's where it really was put to the test, because there was an element of, your hours are from this to this. However, there was also an element of you need to manage your business. And, I'd say that I've never seen more people employed by a company that also works from home. And they actually did the closest thing to work-life balance training and things like that. But it was really, I was one of those people where I hated this calendar. I hated Outlook. I never, ever wanted to put anything on the calendar. And the calendar was the enemy. It was the biggest enemy. Writing something down and you being able to predict what I'm doing was like, I was just so apprehensive to it. It was so not what I wanted. And so it took me a while, but long story short, there were challenges at certain points in my career there, which enabled me to have to do things to manage my day, because I was then late. The quota wasn't being met. The customer wasn't succeeding. Something wasn't working, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I then did was obviously create systems out of necessity that I didn't actually write down or pay attention to, but then would find myself at the latter parts of my career where I was very, very successful in a place where I was working a couple hours a day and doing more than most people doing 10-hour a day, right? And so I wrote this book as a result of my successful actions, and decided to share with people what I did, and then try to carry them into a graduation of it. Rather than you looking at this book and saying, slacking off, I'm going to follow it to the T. It's like, you just do it once through, and then you create your own version. And that's really that's the whole idea. What I found is, if you don't confront your time, you waste it. If you don't confront your money, you waste it. If you don't confront your house, you waste it. You know what I mean? It's all very similar in a lot of ways. And so that's really the goal. It's just to learn from my successes and my failures, but still, everybody needs to fail a little bit on their own sometimes.
We learn from failures, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And I I shared before we started, I beat you. I've been working home for 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's interesting whether you're an employee working from home or
Mm.
you're someone like me and have their own business. The problems are the same.
They really
It's
are.
managing your time, it's managing other people's expectations, all of those various things. And it was fun reading your book because I recognize myself in a lot of that. And first of all, I recognize that, yeah, I do a crappy job still after 20 years about, doing some of these things because I'm like squirrel. But there are so many things that when you work from home, it's very different. And, it's so important. I think that we're talking about this now, even though we're 2 years into the pandemic and so many people are still working from home. I think they're still struggling. We're trying to figure this out. And I think managing other people's expectations for me was one of the hardest things because people, if they were clients, they assumed I was available 24/7, 7 days a week. And, I got over that hump by telling them, okay, here are my hours, whatever they were. And it's great if you need something evenings, weekends, holidays. However, it will cost you double. They all got over that we need you right away thing. And so then I knew, okay, if somebody contacts me on, say, a Sunday evening, I need to pay attention to it. And so I did that. But I also had to manage other people's expectations of me. Well, you're home, you can do such and such. My friends, well, what do you mean you can't go out to lunch and to a movie? And that led to bad slacking off time, right?
Yeah.
So it was, getting that whole mindset of I am working. I think it was one of the hardest things, both for myself, because I'll be honest, slacking off really was just like, it's easy to get distracted, to think, I'm going to go do a load of laundry. Oh, look, the kitchen needs clean. Let's go take a walk. Whoop, the dog's barking.
So
and
easy.
4 hours later, you're going, oh, oopsie.
Yeah. That's huge. That's exactly what happens, isn't it?
Well, and what I liked about your book was one of the things you talked about, and you mentioned this, was the calendar. And now I keep a fairly good calendar, but I need to, predominantly because of this podcast. My producer has access to it. She schedules the interviews, so she has to know what I've got going on in my day. And so I keep my schedule pretty good. But in your book, you talk about how you first, okay, let's take a step back. Let's start with slacking off. Since we're saying that is important, because then that works into everything else. So what the heck is slacking off, and why is it important?
Well, slacking off is the reason you actually do what you do. Mm-hmm. It's the reason you wake up every day. Mm-hmm. It's the reason you go to work.
Right.
It's the reason that you exist, actually. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the beingness of a worker or whatever it is you do to make money. Mm-hmm. Slacking off is actually the ultimate motivation. It's your goals. Mm-hmm. Now, how you slack off determines, what you do throughout your day, I think, and how productive you are. Mm-hmm. See, some people slack off by using an alternative method to get relief, right? Mm-hmm. Some people do it in a negative or positive way, but ultimately slacking off is doing what you want when you want to do it.
Right.
That's what
Spending
it really is.
Spending time with your kids, going to the movie, playing on Facebook, whatever.
Exactly. And quite honestly, I've found that depending on the person, depends on when that slacking off time is appropriate. So for me to tell anybody that their slacking off time should be at 6 a.m. is inappropriate, right?
I'm asleep then. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I also am asleep then. So it's really just, if I were to give another really good driving point to slacking off time, it's really me saying, hey, I don't believe that working is something you should do without, but it's not something that you have to do without doing for yourself. Mm-hmm. It has to be, hey, spend time for yourself at least, make time for yourself truly, but do it in a way that serves you, because that's, time is yours. It's not anybody else's, and you need to choose it properly. And listen, I work 7 days a week. right? I literally work 7 days a
Right.
week. I
Mhm.
study also 7 days a week. I also spend time slacking off 7 days a week,
Mhm.
right? And I still look throughout my day and I still say I can do better,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes people ask me, even people I know that are high producers, they'll ask me, they're like, 7 days a week?
Mhm.
They say it, it's always in a question when somebody
Right.
says it to me.
Uh-huh.
They always
How do you
say,
do that?
7 days a week?
Mhm.
And I'm like, I'm not even doing, I'm barely at 50% right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know what I mean? So anyway, that's a longer way of saying
Mhm.
slacking off time is really your time. It's the
Mhm.
time and the reason that you do what you do.
Mhm.
And your goals should surround slacking off time. And it's
Mhm.
me attempting to help people reorient back to the origin of why they do what they do.
Right. And in your book, you talk about one of the first things is you need to figure out what that slacking off is.
Yes.
Is it spending time with your kids? Is it, taking, 2 hours to prepare and enjoy dinner? Whatever it is, you need to figure all those things out.
That's right. That's right. It's very appropriate
Mhm.
after you've been thrown into an environment
Mhm.
where you are required to do something new or the same thing in a new way
Mhm.
with new surroundings.
Mhm.
Space where you are
Mhm.
does affect your mental ability,
Mhm.
no matter how you put it.
Mhm.
Why is it that when we're at home, we want to be outside?
Right.
Although when we were outside, we didn't care.
Mhm.
Well, because it matters,
Mhm.
and so it's really important to understand, again, it's just to kind of reiterate the same point I made a little bit earlier with more emphasis. Truly, I'm trying to help you understand what slacking off means to you so that you can reorient back to that. And as we evolve and change as beings,
Mhm.
that changes.
Right.
And it's important that, at least for me in my own life, it's important that I take an exterior view of my life every now and again
Mhm.
and look at where I've been, what I'm doing, and where I'm going so that I can direct the path,
Mhm.
in a much deeper perspective than just slacking off. But
Right.
that's it, right? It's
Mhm.
just finding out what it means to you. It
Mhm.
may mean something different to you today than it does in a year.
Right. Right. And I think one of the things that, probably the biggest thing is people need to get over the fact that they think slacking off is a negative.
Oh yes.
And I mean, that's the whole thing is we're always told you need to work, you need to work, you need to work. And, that's, you're a kindergartner. And, and aside from your nap time, I don't even know if they do those anymore.
They
When
should.
and then you get up and you get your milk and your graham crackers, anyhow I did. But that was a really long time ago. But it's not a negative. I mean, we need those mental and physical health breaks in order to be mentally and physically healthy. And I think that's
Ah,
one of the things that people have absolutely got to grasp. And it's difficult when you're working from home because, like for me, yeah, I mean, my phone is always near me. It
mhm.
pings, I look, and you talk about that in the book. Stop doing that. Put your phone down. Um, and so, or and the people that have to absolutely respond to an email right away. Nah, um, you know, and we get so caught up in that I have to work, I have to work, I have to work, I have to work all the time
Mhm.
that that is where our mental and physical health suffers. And I think that's been one of the challenges for people who, especially because of the pandemic, had absolutely no desire to work from home. And whoops, all of a sudden they are. And
Right.
some people have gone back into the office. Some people are permanently home, and they're struggling with, okay, what the heck? And it's funny because we never stop to think when you're in an office, you have slacking off time.
Oh
You
yeah.
get up, you go to the bathroom, you go get coffee, you chat, yes, with your neighbor,
Right.
as we're recording this, Tom Brady actually made it official today. And so if you were in an office, you're probably talking about that.
That's right.
And that's slacking off time, but that's also a time that you're giving your brain to kind of quiet. And so
Mhm.
talk to us more about why slacking off is such a positive and necessary thing.
Well, it's funny when you say this to me, I realize that it's required for somebody to know on a almost a subconscious level what that means. And it really just means anything that you feel pleasure in is your slacking off time. Anything that you feel pleasure doing, that you truly feel pleasure doing, is your slacking off time. That's actually the most important aspect of slacking off time.
And that can be your work. I mean, let's face it. You know, there are people who love what they do.
Right. Those husbands and wives, they get angry at their spouse because they're working too much. It's because they enjoy it. And that's really something that is necessary as well. You know, so I think the importance of slacking off time holds, you know, importance only based on what you enjoy. It's what you enjoy. And talking about, you know, the news or what's happening right now in your workspace is a camaraderie ultimately. And camaraderie is actually very important. That's actually an aspect that not many of us have solved in the work from home environment, including me.
Yeah, and we're very isolated.
We are. And I'll actually have a very real conversation with you about that right now. You know, what you do to slack off, what you find yourself escaping from is not necessarily just the fact that you need to slack off. It's always some simple answer. You know, sometimes I'll tell you, I studied something called study technology. And I learned a long time ago about what we do when we don't fully understand what we're reading or doing. Sometimes it's a matter of there's a misunderstood word in the context of what you're reading, or you know, you can't picture it, or you know, there's ultimate things that I've learned through training cause my attention to jump. Right. So as long as we're being clear with what we're doing that's slacking off, if you started your day reading a book and you're like, that's my slacking off time, then you know. And the point here also is the fact that now you know what you do when you're slacking off. So you can't deny what you're doing when you're slacking off. And so that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't do it, but it does mean that when you clearly understand, you can't deny yourself, because we're our own worst enemy. So we're in the office and we're stealing time, basically. And then we're at home trying to make up for the fact that we stole time at the office. And then we're at home working, trying to prevent ourselves from stealing the time that we feel like is ours because we're at home.
Right.
So then we're building all these things that make us feel guilty or not.
I was just thinking guilt.
That's right. But the truth is we're still our own worst enemy. And ultimately, this is just a way for us to assign what makes us happy and what we do to make us feel productive. You know, I mean, gosh, I can't ever see a time where I ever had a full day of working out, studying, working, and just completely doing everything I can every day, which I hear a lot of good like opinion leaders talk about, where I wasn't happy at the end of that day. But do I do that every day? No, I don't. And am I on Facebook? Absolutely. You know, do I look at my phone and get distracted? Totally. That's another side of things. When you're really good at managing your time, you have a lot more time than most people. And that's another aspect. I mean, that's actually the gift. The gift is that if you really are able to assign conditions to each thing you're doing, like, or importances to each thing you're doing, and you really do this, you really actually look at your day and you look at what you're doing when you're working and not working. The promise is, which I don't promise in the book, but I'll say it now since it's going to be recorded, is that you will actually have more time than you've ever had before. You really will. And that's something like, if I could give you or mankind anything, why wouldn't I give you time?
Because that is the biggest complaint. We don't have enough time, whether it's in our day or you know, in your life. I mean, you know, that's kind of the thing is we all go, we didn't have enough time to do what we wanted to do.
You know, but isn't that the biggest illusion? Like, time is the biggest illusion
Mhm.
in existence.
Right.
It's because we create it,
Mhm.
we decide,
Mhm.
and like it's really the sun helps us,
Mhm. Right.
obviously.
Mhm.
But it's the biggest illusion actually, because it's, I mean, the pressure
Mhm.
is subjective,
Mhm. Right. Yeah.
right?
Even when you're working for someone, or for clients, you
Mm-hmm.
still choose to do it or not. Now, obviously, there are ramifications if you don't.
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, it is still, in most cases, I mean, yes, there are, somebody's going to say, well, no, in most cases, it is still your choice.
That's right.
And I think that's the thing that people really need to remember is, you choose to
Uh-huh.
put yourself in that position. You choose to be working 9 hours a day. You choose to be, all of those various things. It's, I think, yeah, time really is the biggest complaint I think that so many people have. I
Of course.
laugh and I say, what do you mean you don't have 28 hours in your day? It's and it comes back to that slacking off time. I mean, we
Mhm.
know that 8 hours of sleep, we just use that nice round figure, is what you need.
Mhm.
Some people consider that slacking off.
True.
um
Very
when
true.
when I see the book titles, and I will never ever read a book that has one of these titles, I only sleep 4 hours a night. No. For one thing, I think that's not healthy. Now
Mhm.
granted, you can do it, and it's real funny. I mean, I've adjusted 7 hours seems to be, my optimal number. But like for growing kids, I mean, sometimes they need 10 hours. I mean, all these various things. But that comes back to, what society is telling us.
That's
Um,
right.
and so, and that's a big part of what you talk about in your book is you need to figure out what works best for you. Whether it's, okay, I'm going to schedule every minute, that might be, or be a little bit more loosey goosey with it, but understand, what comes with that.
Yeah, I think it just reminds me of what brought me to the point that, gosh, it took me 10 years before I started actively taking control of what I do on a daily basis and not just handling whatever came
Mhm.
in. Ultimately, we try to do these things. We try to plan.
Mhm.
And there's that. I was actually looking at the quote of who it was that said this, as a plan. No plan is a plan to fail. Benjamin Franklin. If you
Mhm.
fail to plan, you are planning to fail.
Right.
Um, I think if I were to put my son or daughter into school,
Mhm.
that would be the first thing outside of grammar and understanding how to read
Mhm.
that I would teach them,
Mhm.
because understanding that and doing it,
Mhm.
or operating on that basis, is important, because
Mhm.
that's where, again, we come into this. Everybody wants more time and is struggling and pressured by
Mhm.
time and not taking enough slacking off
Mhm.
time, and then doing it in inappropriate ways that
Mhm.
are hurting them
Right.
or
Right.
the things that they're doing.
Mhm.
And again, like even me, I even to this day, while I manage my calendar very appropriately and I have slacking off time built in, um, I still have times where I have to actually go back to this book
Mhm.
that I wrote for myself and
Mhm.
say, am I following what I'm
Mhm.
writing here? And, things like the 4-hour work week and, these things, these all have sparked the interest into understanding,
Right.
well, what do I actually do?
Mhm.
And I do reference Tim Ferriss in the book because,
Mhm.
he talks about the new rich and talks about, what people are doing. And it's funny, there's an evolution happening right
Mhm.
now. There's actually a very large evolution
Mhm.
happening of people that are completely sidestepping
Mhm.
the normalcy of operating and living in society and just doing what they want to do. Like there's people living in RVs and doing things, and they have
Mhm.
the happiest life, and they're so successful. They're
Right.
millionaires and
Mhm.
all these things. And it's funny because what they did, in my opinion, just my viewpoint, is they reoriented what was actually important to them, and they remembered what slacking off time was for them,
Mhm.
and they made that as what they built their life around instead of building they're working around, first and then
Right.
slacking off time last.
Mhm.
Like there is a good operating basis of, hey, I'll be fine. I'll always be okay.
Mhm.
I think that's a great belief. I'll always be okay.
Mhm.
Another one's I'll always have time.
Mhm.
I'll always have time. But when you feel like you always have time, then we introduce procrastination
Right. We put
and all
stuff
these.
off. I'll have time
That's
to do
right.
that some other
That's
time.
right.
Mhm.
So that's actually a very, very, very important point, and I got that.
Mhm.
Important point is one thing I don't want
Mhm.
somebody to do is take this as an opportunity to procrastinate
Right.
more,
Mhm.
because there's an important rule that I learned that I'm going to paraphrase, so that hopefully I don't butcher it. Is handling things as they come. As a matter of fact, one of the books I quote, Problems of Work, there's a point in there where he talks about just handling everything that comes your way right away.
Right.
Because if you don't, it will pile up, and piling up, no matter what, is still going to cost you time. And so it actually is the opposite in a way of what it may seem in my book. But what I'm actually saying is, have a map of what matters right now and what doesn't every day. Actually look at what might come your way, and then you'll know better, and you'll make better decisions. And that's the
Right.
point. It's like, create it now so you don't have to worry about it later and say, did I make the right decision? You're still going to do that.
Right.
So at least have a foundation.
Right. And I loved in your book where you're talking about how to schedule things. And again, you do it step by step, and it's baby steps. I mean, it's
right.
not, oh my God, what am I doing for the next 5 minutes?
Yeah.
But you also categorize things as basically this absolutely has to be done. And it can, and that's personal and business. I mean, you mentioned in your book, when your daughter calls from school and says, Daddy, I'm sick, the world stops, right?
That's
Doesn't
right.
matter.
Right.
Or when the boss says, I need you to drop everything and do this now. You do have to figure out, okay, is that really true? But
Right.
assuming it is, because we've all had those bosses that were the drop everything nows, and everything in their life was drop everything nows, right?
Sure.
But, and then there's the, okay, we got to get this done at some point. And then there's the, okay, this is important, but it can be put off type of
right.
things. So talk to us more about, how we can kind of do that.
So this is where I'm a little sneaky in what I'm doing here. And I'll actually tell you what my intention is. What I found is that because of my thoughts or opinions about what things mean, like a boss, like what does a boss mean to me? What does my job mean?
Right.
How much power do they actually have over me?
Right.
It's made me make inappropriate decisions that benefited me in the moment as a worker or a person. And because of my dedication to a situation, to a beingness, I would call it, which is like being a account executive or executive, whatever, I would make inappropriate decisions that seemed more dedicated to my job and less dedicated to me. And so ultimately, what I'm trying to do is get people to confront that they are also potentially making decisions that don't help them but hurt them because they're trying to be dedicated to the boss. And the core of you, the you that exists, is ultimately important. Your integrity is whole. It's the wholeness of you. And any opportunity that you take to dwindle away your personal integrity only makes you less whole. So yeah, you know what? Be the top performer, work if you want to work. And that's amazing. Like, look at Elon Musk. The guy is a workaholic, but he loves it. So, and he's successful, and he knows what it takes, and he's willing to die for it. So that's okay. He will give things to the world. But but the father or the mother who has kids and tries to run a life and a business or multiple businesses, what makes her more successful? How is she so happy?
Right.
And still shows up for the practice, or still takes the kids to sports, or still has a successful marriage. Oh, no, they're just lucky. That's not true. Luck doesn't exist. Luck is just more effort toward a particular goal and keeping it there, and not allowing anybody else to stop you. And so ultimately, the point is, it takes work. It takes confront and knowing exactly what your meanings are and what can violate your time and not. Ultimately, you own it. So what I'm doing is saying it's your world. It's time that you take responsibility and create it on purpose, starting with every second and minute and hour you spend every day. Right? That's it.
And that is a challenge, especially for people like me who get sidetracked easily. And so of course the first thing to that is, okay, if I'm going to get sidetracked easily, eliminate those things that sidetrack me. If I'm going to stop my world anytime I get a text, then I need to mute my phone and put it where I can't see it. Right. If Facebook is going to, take my attention away, then turn off Facebook. And we all know, we've heard things like, and now that, I know these work, I just can't bring myself to do it. The people who, only check their email 4 times a day, that works for them. That wouldn't work for me. Now it might. I just can't bring myself to try it.
I couldn't do it either.
Yeah, I know those people, and I'm like, yeah. But of course, the funny thing is there anything catastrophic in my life that would come to me via email that I have to respond to right away? Probably not. So only checking email every 4 hours or something like that, would not be tragedy. But I do things like, I don't have it tell me when I have new email messages. So I have to go and look, and things like that. So I think just taking, like I said, some of the baby steps of eliminating those distractions, doing all of those things is probably a good way to start. And then keeping the calendar. I love how in your book and here also you talked about the fact that you didn't like calendars. And it curbs the enthusiasm. It curbs your spontaneity. Well, we got to keep calendars. And to some people really are the 5-minute, type of things. And then others, it's like, okay, I know in my day I need to do this and this and this. And that's kind of how they keep their calendar. But yeah, we need at least some type of organization.
That's right. And then, the old saying of what you don't know won't hurt you is not true. Right. It's actually the total opposite. It's what you don't know that hurts you.
Yes.
And so ultimately, knowing the things that are pulling your attention away, that's why everybody should start off on the first day that they are working, whether with someone or not, of slacking off, so they understand who they are and what their slacking off is. Now, some people infinitely can have that. The point is just to get to know yourself, know what you do to slack off, and maybe right away. But if you don't actually put it into action, will you really know? Right? That's the point. So that's a huge part of the whole process is take small steps, and if you get there faster than everybody else, great. If you get there slower, who cares? It's all about you. It's about you understanding and knowing what's important, and giving yourself back something that you may need or want, right? And that's essentially, I truly believe that people wanted time. And so that was my best way of helping them get it. There's probably plenty of ways that people do that. But this is just another example of how you could potentially just look to any chapter and gain something. And there again, it's different for everybody, but that's ultimately the goal here for sure.
Right. And obviously things happen. I mean, the 2 years ago, people were merrily working in their little offices on a Friday, and they did not go in that next Monday.
That's
and
right.
And more importantly, their kids did not go to school. Their
Hmm.
spouse did not go into work. And, and it was just this, oh my gosh, what the heck are we going to do? Now, in many cases, the kids are back at school. There is always that imminent threat that tomorrow they're not going to be,
Of course,
until we
every
get this
day.
pandemic completely under control. That's just kind of out there. And so what happened was people who, as we were saying, really did not know how to function working from home. Not only were working from home, they were teaching, they were doing all of these various things. And those who survived sat down and got themselves organized. That just really was the ultimate thing that had to happen. They couldn't just keep willy-nilly going, oh my God, what are we going to do? They had to say, okay, the kids need me between 8 and 10. Then I can do this from here to here and this from here to here. And, and then they were able to survive.
Right. That's at the end of the day, one thing I very much appreciate about my ex-wife, who's my ex-wife now, but still the mother of my children, is that she was just persistent on lists. She was a list person. She had, to this day, she has lists. And it's funny, I never was. I never was. I was all about
I'm married to a list maker too. It's like,
oh, there you go. And it was, but I do appreciate that now, because all I was really doing was taking mental notes and making mental lists the whole time. It's just that the lists do in fact help you orient in the beginning. You don't have to rely on the list, but you create it once and you use it as a roadmap to go back to. And that's all this really is, right? That's what people do.
And I think one of the things that is important is to get it out of your head. To write it down, to put it on the computer. Because things, and it's funny, I just got this from Amazon yesterday, a tiny little whiteboard that is now going to go on the edge of my desk, where I write down the remember to do type of things. It's not really anything that needs to go on a calendar or schedule or anything like that. It's just that little thing that I know that when I think of it, I need to write it down, because if I don't, 5 minutes from now, it's gone from my brain. And I might vaguely remember there's something, but I never, until, something happens and it's like, oh, I was supposed to have done that. And you talk in your book about, like we said, starting with writing down those slacking off things, writing down your calendar, writing down all of these things, because, if we don't write them down, they do go out of our brains.
Right. That's actually the number one tool when you're missing the camaraderie in your work from home experience. That's not necessarily written in the book, but eventually, if someone does actually write these things down, they start to notice that they're not actually feeling so much of the need to camaraderise and have a conversation with someone and tell everybody, throw up your problems, on everyone. It's actually a huge, huge key point to why do people say to keep a journal? Why do people do, it's not everybody's great at these things, but it will help those people who are working from home to get it out and to handle it. And who cares if you have a bunch of papers everywhere, but at least you're getting it out. That's a huge, huge driving point of relief, as
Well, and I have also learned, and maybe this is age, I have to be a little bit more detailed. I have, I'm learning to not do the whole sticky note thing and all of those, but I'll look at a sticky note and it might say Bob. And when I look at that 3 days later, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Or worse, you write down just a phone number, right? And you're like, who the heck does this belong to? And what am I supposed to do with it? So I've learned, okay, be a little bit more detailed. So write down, call Bob about, and then, maybe then it kind of, it gives my brain that mental break. Maybe that is kind of the slacking off part, is then I'm not stressed over looking at the sticky note and trying to figure out what it was. It's just, okay, I've done it. I've put it in its place, whatever that is, and I can go on to the next thing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. That it reminds me of of also Problems of Work, the book Problems of Work as well. There's a lot of little things to do in there when you've been working at home all day long and you need to go outside and do something or take a walk. There's a simple thing called taking a walk in there, where you think it's just taking a walk, but what it actually does is it tells you, and I'm totally paraphrasing, so I reference everybody to look at the book Problems of Work, but you look at items as you're walking that are close to you first, and then and you keep walking until you actually are more awake, which is totally the opposite of what you would expect, especially if you're walking for miles or something, right? But the point is that you're introverted into things, and then you're extroverted, and when you're extroverted, you have energy. And when you're introverted into things, you tend to disperse off of purpose, right? Not on purpose, right? So when you're dispersed, you're dispersing because you're sick of introverting into something all day long. So it's kind of cool that you talk about writing it down the way you do, because you're really just getting it out literally. You're getting your attention out. And that's also a huge fact and a very important rule to live by. I think that's brilliant.
Right. Now, speaking of very important rules, one of the things that you talk about in your book is saying no. And I love that, because part of it is I'm always one of those first one to volunteer, first one to say, hey, I'll do it, and part of that is because that way I know it will be done right.
That's right. I totally understand that.
Right. And so tell us why, and it is so absolutely critical to say no.
Quite importantly, it goes back to what you believe the definitions are of your boss, your job, your life. If you were to prioritize, if you do the prioritization of your life, and you realize that your kids and your wife are more important than your job, or your job is more important than your kids and your wife, maybe to you. Well, as long as you're doing and making decisions and saying yes or no to the right things, you'll be happy.
Right.
But if you're not, you're going to be unhappy. And, it's just an attempt really to make sure that those things are coordinated together, that they relate, that they're related, that they match. Like how many times have you seen somebody laugh and cry, right? And they're like, that's kind of weird. Or you've seen something that somebody who should be crying, but they're actually laughing.
Right.
And sometimes, depending on how long the laugh is, you're like, are they going wacky on me?
Yeah.
Right. Have they snapped? But the point here is that there's a misalignment. And so all that really is in a nutshell is the ability to align what you say yes to also with what you say no to. And you should be able to equally say both. But no is so negative. I mean, I read The Power of No and really understood that it was actually a great thing. And there's a lot of really amazing people out there that believe no is actually the beginning of a communication and relationship, and that no is truth. Because somebody who's willing to say no is confronting that they do or do not want something and willing to tell you that. So somebody saying no to something is a sign of honesty more than somebody saying yes because they don't want to look or be faced with what happens when they say no. And I was the same way. I was like the yes person. I was like, yes. And there's benefits to that. There's experiences to that. I mean, the movie, right? However, there is a time and a place, and no cannot be held as a negative opinion for things,
right?
Because that prevents you from, again, lowering yourself or being less whole or having less integrity.
Right. And there are certainly ways to say no. Sometimes you just have to flat out no. But other times it's like, no, we're not doing that. Kids come up and say, Dad, I want to do X. No, I need to finish this, but we will do that later. The boss, the client, I need you to do this now. No, I'm not going to do it right now, but I'll do it later. Or someone, I'll have someone else do it for you, all of those various things. And, it's I think, it's important. No does not diminish us, that's the thing is it's not making us look weak or nasty. I mean,
Right.
there's both sides to that, but yeah, saying no sometimes is one of the most healthy things that you can do.
It is. And let's explore that for just a minute, because that ultimately is the reason it has, such fear or a nuance under it that may not be appropriate.
Mhm.
It's how you say no.
Mhm.
So the first thing I've learned in my communication training is acknowledgement is the most important part of a communication.
Mhm.
So if you ask me to do something, we could role play it for a minute, but basically if you ask me to do something and I say no up front,
Mhm.
I've lacked the acknowledgement of your communication.
Right. So then I'm annoyed.
All right. So then it's negative.
Mhm.
However, if you ask me to be here at 10 a.m.
Mhm.
and I say, okay, well, I have something going on that doesn't allow me to be there at 10 a.m.
Mhm.
So the answer is no,
Mhm.
but let's figure this out.
Mhm.
It's a totally different no.
Right.
Now that's just one way, but the first
Mhm.
thing that I absolutely have to push is that acknowledgement, because when we are saying something like no,
Mhm.
and I say we, most people, not everybody,
Mhm.
the no has to come out so fast because we don't want to say it because we have fear to say it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
No. Mhm.
Exactly. So it's like, what do you mean? You're like rejected and violated and, in a corner crying somewhere.
Mhm.
But no, it just means that upon the introduction
Mhm.
of a chance to do something,
Mhm.
you've decided not to,
Right.
or it doesn't fit the model or the schedule or the goal of the day. So it's a great thing because you will immediately understand your friends and your relationships by how much they're willing to tell you no.
Mhm.
And you're also able to form a good cohesion with people, right? And their lives and your life, because what will fulfill you, it fulfills you. That's why some of us are great in our relationships because we are in a good understanding of what we like and don't like, and what makes us feel good and not feel good, right?
Right. And having your knowing what your schedule is and all of those important things does make it easier to say no, because okay, this fits in my day, this doesn't fit in my day, all of those various things. And and in many ways it does make it easier to say no, because it's no, I just don't have time to do this. And somebody who it's real funny. If somebody says no and I know that they're just sitting around watching TV, I'm like, really? Seems to me like you have time to do it. Well, but what I don't know is maybe watching that program on TV is incredibly important to them for whatever reason.
Right.
And I think that brings the other point is if somebody tells us no, we shouldn't take it personally. We shouldn't, obviously it depends on how they say it, but
That's right.
we don't always need to ask them why. Well, what do you mean no? What do you mean you can't do this now? Mike, what do you mean you can't do this right now? It's okay for us to just say, okay. Now you might ask some follow-up questions. Like if it's, no, I'll do it later. When?
But see, that's the thing. It's the no first that introduces the thought after of annoyance or fear or anger. It's because, see, it's almost a hidden thing that people are actually angry because they weren't acknowledged. And because no is a rejection. And so what are you actually rejecting? You're not rejecting the thing, you're rejecting the person to most people. You're rejecting the flow, if you will. So if I'm saying any communication to you and you're rejecting the communication, it doesn't matter what you're saying, it's going to feel certain
I'm
way
just
for
mad.
me. So acknowledge first, which I should put this in the book, but acknowledge first. Always acknowledge first, then say no. That should be the way it is. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I beve that would be a help,
Right. Well, and as you said, it shows I'm paying attention to you. I value you.
Yeah.
All of these various things. But yeah, when it's an immediate no, it's like it's you feel like you're back in elementary school, and you go up and or you ask mom, can we, and you don't even get out what you want.
That's
just
right.
No.
And
And
just trigger people.
pretty soon you stop asking. I mean, that's
right.
the thing, is you realize, their answer is going to be no. So I'm just not going to ask anymore.
Right.
And that's certainly not a healthy relationship, whether it's personal or professional.
That's right.
Oh, cool. Well, oh my gosh, Mike, we have almost reached the top of the hour. This has been so much fun. And
Likewise.
I think this has been a great discussion. How do people find you and connect with you, and how do they get the book?
Well, it's only available on Amazon right now. If you just look up Slacking Off the book, or Slacking Off, a Successful Way to Work from Home, you can get it on Amazon digitally, or get a hard copy. I have Facebook, Slacking Off book at Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. I'm not super active on the social channels, but certainly will.
It's not on your
answer.
schedule.
It's really not a big part of my daily activity. It is a piece of it, but I also I have another page just under my name, and I send little quotes and things for people to be motivated by, and I do a lot. So I'd say just through those channels is probably the most appropriate.
Cool. I love it. And I think this is important, whether it's somebody like me who has been working from home for 20 years, to somebody who is all of a sudden, and things are still changing. I mean,
right.
Go back into the office, you come home, hybrid, all these various things. Or somebody who's thinking, can I even do it? If I quit my job and go to work from home, what is that going to entail? And so I think there's great tips in there. And shoot, even if you're not working from home, all the tips in there are very important. It is about setting your priorities, scheduling your day, all of those various things. I think it's just important for everyone to read.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, basically, if you're just beginning to work from home, there's a trap waiting for you. If you're working from home, you've been through it and you're trying to build yourself out of it. This is just one of those tools that will help you take yourself from one brick at a time to maybe 5 or 10 bricks at a time, and get out of any holes that you might be in. So that's ultimately what I did to do it. And that's just my ways of doing it.
I love it. Well, as I said, this has been a great discussion. Do you have any final thoughts for everyone that you want to leave them with?
I never, ever stop being persistent in your pursuit to happiness. And, definitely take every single one of those steps in the book seriously and do them. And you'll come out the other end a different person, and likely have a new system for your own. Please share with me if you have.
Great. I love it. Well, again, the book is Slacking Off, A Successful Way to Work from Home. I have been having a fascinating discussion with Mike Arnold. I'm Deb Creer, and until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.